Here we are, back at it again. Another night, another video. And today, um, the thing that inspired this video is, often when we're moving about in our daily lives, tending to what we have to tend to, completing different tasks, and making our way out amongst our peers and our subordinates and our superiors, right? Oftentimes I don't think we're very much aware of how we're moving, right? A lot of times I hear people say things like, I don't care about what people think about me. I don't care about what people say about me. I don't care how people feel about me. And I want to say there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But in doing so, you have to be aware and be conscious that, you're creating enemies, right? So that leads me to tonight's topic, which is the truth about creating enemies. The truth about creating enemies. The relationship with an enemy is a rich source of wisdom, revealing truths about strategy, character, and even oneself. Here are some legendary quotes about enemies characterized by their perspective. So, first, we got strategy and power. Now, this is a practical and tactical approach to dealing with adversaries or enemies. My first quote is, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." Now that's from the ancient Sanskrit text. It's also an ancient Arab proverb, right? Why is this legendary? It encapsulates the core of realpolitik and temporary alliances. It acknowledges that friendship can be based on shared opposition rather than shared values, a timeless concept in war and politics. My next quote: if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. I love that. That's attributed to Sun Tzu in the Art of War. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are familiar with that book. Now, why is this legendary? Because this perhaps is the most comprehensive and profound statement on strategy. It elevates conflict from mere brute force to a contest of knowledge and self awareness. Okay, my last favorite quote when it comes to dealing with strategy and power: never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake. This is attributed to Napoleon Bonaparte. Very profound. Now, why is this legendary? Because it kind of sort of gives like a masterclass in patience and the cunning of the strategy, right? It suggests that sometimes the best action is inaction, allowing the enemy's flaws to lead in their downfall. Okay. Now, we move on and we talk about character and self reflection. Now, these quotes focus on what enmity reveals about one's own character. Now, we have to think about this, right? Never mind. Let's go to these quotes, right? Character and self reflection. The first quote is, beware that when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster. For when you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you, right? That's from Friedrich Nietzsche. I think that's his name. But it's from Beyond Good and Evil, right? Now I like this because it's a powerful warning about the corrupting nature of conflict. Prolonged focus on an enemy can erode your own morals and identity. That's why we have to focus more within ourselves, right? All right. Next quote. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. I love that. I love that. That's from Marcus Aurelius in Meditations, right? Now, this philosophy argues that the truest way to defeat an enemy is by refusing to stoop down to their level. Therefore, you maintain your own integrity. Okay? That's very profound. Now, next we move to the next perspective of psychology, right? The quotes that I like from the perspective and psychology of creating enemies is here. An enemy is a person whose story you have not heard. Um, Growing up, my family had a saying, a very popular saying that often stuck with me. They see my glory, but they don't know my story. And that's always stuck with me throughout my whole life. When people are looking at you and admiring certain things that you accomplish or that you may acquire or levels in life that you may reach, And they see that, but they don't know the story behind something else. That could be the same thing said about an enemy or envy, might I add. Okay. So the next quote we have is this one's big. Have no fear of perfection. You'll never reach it. But have no fear of enemies. You will always have them. Okay, this is from Salvador Dali. Kind of paraphrase, but you get it. Now, this is a really realistic acceptance that criticism and opposition are an inevitable part of doing anything meaningful. Okay? And again, we got Sun Tzu. A quote from him again is, "The greatest victory is that which requires no battle." I love that because you can beat them in the mind without ever having to endure the physicalities and certain casualties that you may have to incur when you're creating enemies, right? Now, this is champion's wisdom, diplomacy, and strategy over brute force. To outthink an enemy so completely that conflict is avoided is the highest form of skill. Always remember that, right? Okay. Now, these are some I like. It's kind of witty and incisive, right? So we got Eleanor Roosevelt, wonderful lady, who said, "Love your enemy; it will drive him nuts." Right now, this takes a high-minded ideal and gives a great subversive but practical twist. It's a form of psychological warfare through being polite and kind. Right. The next um the next quote we have is from John F. Kennedy, and it says, "Forgive your enemies, but never forgive their names." And that's big for me too because I could forgive what was done to me, but I'm never gonna forget who done it, right? And that's kind of like the modern phrase. What is it? People won't remember what you did for them, but they will remember how you made them feel, or it's something like that. And so that's something we have to always keep in mind. That's big. But this quote, it perfectly balances the moral high ground, right? The forgiveness with practical wisdom. The never forget part. It advises compassion without naivete. So don't be naive to what's going on. Be aware, understand. But at the same time, you can kind of brush it off your shoulders, right? And um, the last one that I love, right? The last quote that I love. Now this one is kind of crazy, but you gotta love it, right? And it goes, "Apologies to my enemies, they're still alive." That's Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Um, they're still alive. I'm not gonna go too deep into that, but if you understand strategy and war and things like that, or even if you're a sports type of guy, like you don't have to take it literal, but you can understand where I'm coming from when I say this quote, right? It's very darkly humorous and famously blunt, but it reflects a lifelong no nonsense attitude, right? You crush on an ant with a sledgehammer when you're doing things like this. And sometimes that's the way it has to be. So they can't be mad at us, right? Just the way it is. But those are my favorite quotes from different perspectives, different sides of the game and things like that. But these quotes show that an enemy can be a source of fear, but also a catalyst for strategy, right? Self discovery and even humor. Now, the creation of enemies, whether intentional or unintentional, is a significant impediment to both business success and personal development. Conflict is inevitable, right? You can't avoid it. But actively cultivating enmity or failing to manage relationships effectively creates a series of damaging obstacles. That's something we have to always keep in mind, right? So, a brief thought that I had when I was thinking about this topic and just doing a little bit of research on certain things was, how does creating enemies affect one both in business and in personal growth, right? So I kind of got like a brief breakdown of how it interferes in both domains, okay? So, how creating enemies interferes with business growth. Now, business runs on relationships, reputation, and resources. So creating enemies attacks all three. It's going to interfere. no matter how you look at it. Now, the first way that it interferes with business growth is it burns bridges and limits opportunities, right? So you could lose partnerships, right? Lost partnerships is a very bad thing. The person you alienate today might be your next key potential partner, investor, or client that you need tomorrow. Okay. The business world is interconnected, right? And a burned bridge can close off your entire network. You don't want to do that, right? So think about it, the enemy of my enemy effect. Your enemy may actively work to turn others against you, poisoning your reputation with potential allies and creating a coalition opposing you. That's something we have to keep in mind. Now, number two, it wastes precious resources. You got time and energy, right? Instead of focusing on innovation, product development, or customer service, you and your team are distracted by other types of politics, defensive strategies, and countering attacks. This is a massive drain on productivity. You do not want this. Another one is financial costs. It's going to have you in legal battles. Competitive price wars sparked by animosity and the loss of customers due to a damaged reputation all have direct financial consequences. All right, so we have to keep that in mind, right? Number three, it hampers innovation and creates a toxic culture. Often in the I'm not going to say just in the business world, you may have a job, you may be a contractor, anything, but the big thing that I know about now is toxic culture. You have to think about this. Groupthink and fear, right? In an environment where dissent is treated as disloyalty, employees become afraid to voice constructive criticism or new ideas. I'm pretty sure if you work in the office environment or any professional environment, you see this a lot, right? They become afraid to voice the constructive criticism that you may need to grow and develop fresh ideas in the job site, right? This stifles the creativity essential for growth. Okay. So also we have it's a talent drain. High performing people, whether that be an employee, an entrepreneur, these high performing people have options. They will not stay in a toxic, politically charged environment. Is not beneficial to them, right? And it's not conducive to the growth. Okay. So losing your best people to a culture of enmity is a catastrophic cost. Very, very, very big hindrance. Okay. Now, number four, we have damages brand and reputation. You you get a loss of trust, right? Customers, investors, and partners are drawn to trustworthy organizations. Okay, so public views, especially on things like social media, it makes a company or an organization, it makes them look unprofessional, it makes them look petty, and it makes them look unstable. All right. Also, you get negative publicity. A personal vendetta can easily spill over into public view, creating a PR crisis that overshadows your actual products or services. Don't want that. Right? So for an example, imagine a startup founder who publicly and viciously attacks a competitor. They might gain short-term attention, but they also signal to investors that they are volatile, to potential partners that are difficult. They don't want to let people know that they are difficult. That's not a good thing. That's not being great. Like people not wanting to work with you, being so controversial all the time, or having to voice your opinion in certain instances. That's not a good thing. Sometimes you just have to go along to get head, right? I know that might not sound like the best idea for a lot of people, but it is. And to top talent in their workplace, is defined by that conflict, right? So let's look at it like this. Let's switch to the other side. How creating enemies interferes with personal growth, right? So how creating enemies interferes with personal growth. Personal growth requires self awareness, right? Learning and strong relationships. Empathy directly undermines these pillars. So, for one, we have it stunts learning and self awareness, okay? People playing the blame game. It's easier to blame an enemy for your failures than to engage in honest self reflection. This prevents you from seeing your own role in the situation and learning from the experience. You could also see this like the closed mindset. You dismiss any feedback or criticism from someone you view as an enemy, even if it contains a valuable kernel of truth, right? Dropping gems. You missing the gems because you involved in other things. Your mind is in different places. It's not necessarily focused on the work. This closes you off to perspectives that could help you improve. Very much so. And that's the main thing when it comes to personal growth. You always want to be improving, no matter what, continuously developing. Okay. Number two, it consumes mental and emotional energy. We all understand this drain, right? We all understand the mental and emotional strain that comes with, like I say, being an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur, being an employee, being a contractor, just having to be a highly productive person, right? So, rumination and stress, harboring resentment and anger is mentally exhausting. The constant cycle of thinking about your enemy, it drains the energy you could be using for creative pursuits, hobbies, or building positive relationships. Okay, that's what we have to keep in mind. So we can look at like the high blood pressure tax. Okay, the stress of sustained animosity has real physical health consequences, including anxiety, poor sleep, and it can raise your blood pressure. Like, who wants that, man? You don't want these type of things that aren't conducive to your physical health throughout the day-to-day trials and tribulations that we have to be involved when you're creating enemies. Okay, so number three, it's going to narrow your social and professional network. We talked about network before, but I had to throw this in there again because it is network is very big in business, or just like I say, when you're trying to be highly productive, right? So I kind of look at it like poisoning the well, right? Just like in business, a personal enemy can influence your broader social circle, creating rifts and forcing mutual friends to choose sides. I hate. I'm not gonna say I hate. I think it's a good thing to pick sides. But in business, what I'm starting to learn a lot about life is a lot of times you gotta stay neutral. Sucks to say, but picking sides sometimes um it will inevitably create you enemies, right? It's better to just stay in the middle, right? Okay, so misconnections, that's another point. That person that you've labeled an enemy, they might have skills, man. They might be very skillful, right? They might have a lot of knowledge, or they may have a network that you could have that could have been valuable to you, right? But by closing those doors on them, you close the door on those opportunities. So those are things we have to think about when creating enemies. Okay, you always have to keep that in the back of your mind. Now, number four, it reinforces negative self identity. You become the aggressor. When you actively create enemies, you start to see yourself as a warrior. Okay, this is a good thing and a bad thing, but this can become a self fulfilling prophecy where you approach new situations looking for a fight, right? Because you're always on that aggressive side, you're always on that controversial side, you're always seeking and looking for conflict, thereby creating more conflict and confirming your own negative self view, right? Like, I call it the victim mentality, the woe is me mentality, right? Everybody feeling like the world against them, or all the pressure on their shoulders and nobody like me and it's just me against the world. I don't really like that. But that's what comes out of it when you're creating enemies, and that's what happens and how it interferes with self-growth, right? So let me give like a personal example. Consider a professional who feels threatened by like a talented colleague, right? Instead of seeking to collaborate or learn from them, they engage in gossip and sabotage, self sabotage. They not only miss a chance to improve their own skills, but also earn a reputation as being insecure and difficult, limiting their future advancement. This is big. This happens a lot, right? Um, I can't speak on corporate America right now. I'm not in corporate America, but you can see a lot of people shooting themselves in the foot, hindering their growth, personal and professional, right? I'm just gonna be honest. I've fallen victim to this as well. Like, I'm not perfect. So as is it, that is what it is. This this is a mind twist, right? So we can look at it on the alternative from enemies to adversaries or teachers, right? Now, the key distinction between an enemy, where the goal is their defeat or to humiliate them, and an adversary, which is a worthy opponent who challenges you, or even a teacher, someone whose opposition reveals your weaknesses and helps you grow, personally or professionally. To me, it's healthy competition, right? A business rival or a skilled colleague can push you to be better, which we should all be doing. They can push you to be better, sharper, and more innovative. The focus is on outperforming, not destroying, right? When you meet that guy on the football field, or you meet that guy or girl in the classroom, or you meet that person in whatever you're trying to pursue in life, and both of y'all look at each other like, dang, that's my competition. And y'all motivate each other to continuously develop and to master your craft and ultimately become experts, right? That's healthy competition. Next, we have constructive conflict. So, like disagreement, when handled respectfully, it can lead to better decisions and stronger solutions. The focus is on the issue, not the person, right? That's big. It should, to me, it should always be that way. You should always be focusing on the task at hand, right? And not necessarily the person. That's kind of how I look at it. Like, whatever goal I have or whatever task I have no emotions about it. I have no personal feelings about it. It's all business to me. So it's like whatever I need to accomplish that goal, as long as it doesn't restrict me or compromise my integrity, morally, legally, ethically, my focus is on the issue, not the person, right? So as I conclude, creating enemies is a short-sighted strategy that provides an illusion of strength or clarity, but ultimately erodes the very foundations of long-term success and well-being. Like the most successful businesses and individuals are those who can navigate conflict without creating permanent enemies. Okay. Understanding that today's opponent could be tomorrow's friend or ally. All right. That's what we have to understand about this. Let's go.